What's up, guys? Welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Mill. Jay Mill, if you like. So let's get into it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Cowboys game day. They take on the Vegas Raiders today. So before we get into that, I had a question in the comments below about the name, Knockers on the Bottom. So when I first came on, I let you guys know, hey, welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. And the reason why the podcast is called Knockers on the Bottom is because to play in the National Football League, you got to have some knockers at the bottom, if you know what I mean. It's a place where these men, they hit hard, they're big, they're fast, they're strong, and it's not for the faint of heart. If you're soft, you're going to get, weeded out pretty quickly here. But kind of the way the name was brought about was I was brainstorming some names with my girl, and, you're joking around and you're being silly and things like that. And one thing got to another, and we started talking about the word knockers. And, we were joking around, throwing it back and forth. And she's like, well, you got to have some knockers on the bottom. And we just both bust out laughing because it was just a very funny phrase to us, just the implications of it, especially if you go back throughout history and, you see what the term knockers actually is. The phrasing knockers on the bottom. And then I just started relating it to a football sense. And I'm like, well, you do kind of have to have some knockers on the bottom in order to play in the National Football League. And, it just kind of stuck. And so that's kind of how we came up with it. Knockers on the bottom. Some people say you got to have kahunas. Or some people just come out and straight up say you got to have some big balls if you're going to be running through that line with other 280-pound men who, for some reason, can still move at a 4.5, 4.6 speed. I mean, I'm a science nerd, and force equals mass times acceleration. So, you start thinking about these guys, and, a lot of these guys are basically putting their body through a car crash every single time they get hit. And if that doesn't take some knockers on the bottom, I don't know what does. But let's get into the Raiders versus the Cowboys. I hope that answers the question. If not, submit below. I'll try to give even more detail. But the Raiders come off of a Thursday night game, so I think they've had 10 days to prepare for the Cowboys, and their last game was a 10-7 loss to the Broncos. The Cowboys' last game was a 27-17 loss to Arizona, and so much has happened since then, hence why you don't see any film breakdowns up on the screen, because honestly, I'm not even sure what the team is going to look like coming out of this. We went over in the episode a few days ago that the Cowboys, if you think of Quinnen Williams, Savon Ravel, DeMarvion Overshone, Logan Wilson, Kalen Carson, I mean, that's already 5 new players. And then if you count that Malik Hooker hasn't played for a few weeks, about 4 weeks now. Donald hasn't played. I don't think Trayvon Diggs is going to be active this game, but if he is, that's another one. But let's just go with the bare minimum. At the bare minimum, you're adding at least 4 bodies who haven't played a snap for the Cowboys this season. And if you add in Kalen Carson, only played 20 snaps just last week, you have 5 Cowboys who have played 20 or fewer snaps for the team, all expected to play some sort of role in this game. Now, I think Savon Ravel is most likely going to be a special teams role. I think it all depends on the way the game flow goes, right? Because the Cowboys' luck this season has been, hey, we're going to go into the game, these are the roles, and then something else happens, right? Somebody's getting burnt and they can't cover, or there's some sort of short-term injury that hits, and all of a sudden guys who haven't played are now thrust into roles that nobody expected. So if all goes perfectly according to plan, Savon Ravel will probably only play special teams, maybe get his, chances maybe late in the game if the Cowboys are down big and the game's out of hand, or if the Cowboys are up big and the game is out of hand. But I feel like as long as the game is within a competitive balance, he should see very little work, if any. Quinnen's probably going to see a heavy workload. Logan Wilson, I don't know. I would expect him to play a normal share of the snaps. So I expect it to be like Overshown rotating, Wilson rotating, and unfortunately Kenneth Murray still rotating in, and Shamar James rotating in, and Maris Leofau rotating in, and then Damone Clark probably either inactive or playing special teams only. So it's a lot of unknown. Now, there's two things that I've seen people talk about, and I don't want to make this completely defensive heavy, but it's the most intriguing part of the game tonight. So some people are like, oh man, if they can't get this defense rolling against the Raiders and they added these new pieces, they're never going to do it. I want to caution you against that line of thinking. This isn't Madden, right? You know how you go out in Madden and your defense is a 72 overall, and you go in a game and you trade for Quinnen and you trade for Logan Wilson, and you drop those guys in there, and then you have an Overshown come back off of injury, and you drop in the rookie Ravel and Carson and all these people I'm talking about, and your defense on the game goes, we're showing you were a 72, and now you're an 84, and instantly your defense plays at that 84 level. These are humans, right? So it's not going to work that way. And these are humans, coming off of, just think of that, you as a human being, right? You're expected to do whatever it is that you do at a high level, but all of a sudden you have a death in your family or a death of a close friend. All of a sudden you're uprooted and you start working at a brand new company. You got to move your family and you're moving across the country. And so there's a lot of different things that go into playing well, right? And this company that you're working for, yeah, it's in your field, right? That's why you took the job, but it's not exactly the same job as you were doing before. It's probably going to take you a few weeks of getting the systems down and getting the training down and how that company wants you to present yourself, in whatever way it is, to each other, to customers and clientele on the outside, or to the internal company structure, depending on your position within there. And then only then, after you kind of start to get that, you start to find your bearings, and hopefully you start to do well, right? It's the same way in football. This is no different. These guys are changing teams. They're learning new playbooks. They're learning new schemes. They're moving their family. They're dealing with tragedy. Some of them are coming off of injury. Like, just because you're playing your first game off of injury, it's not like Madden, right? Your rating was 91. Then you got injured and it dropped down to 72. And then right after your injury, the rating just drops back up to 91. That's not how it is in real life, right? People have to get acclimated. So I just caution everyone that if the Cowboys do go out there tonight and that defense doesn't look spectacular or much better the first night, it doesn't mean that it's not going to get much better. We do live in a microwave society. I know everybody wants instant results, but that's not realistic, especially with a game like football, right? Football, more than anything, is a machine. It's cogs in a machine. Everything's got their own job. There's the belts, there's the cogs, there's the battery, all these different parts that make this machine all work together. And all you see is the end product, right? You turn it on, it works. You're not opening it up to see all the things that are twisting and turning, and some things, might overheat, and now nothing's working, right? And the one thing's a little loose, and now everything comes apart. But sometimes some of those things are loose, or some of those things are overheating, but everything runs just good enough to kind of get you through, right? That's what we're hoping for tonight. We're hoping that the Cowboys have some new pieces, and while everything might not necessarily be perfect, it runs just well enough to get us through the night. And then the hope is, you get it to where it can get fixed. You look up under the hood, you tune a few things up, then you go out there and run it again. Okay, it's a little bit better now, but we still have a little issue here. Let's tune it up again. Okay, boom, now this thing is running. All right. Now the hope is, while that's happening, that the Cowboys can kind of find a way to win, right? While they're fine-tuning this thing and trying to get this thing to be a better product. I honestly don't think it'll be a finished product for a couple of more years. I think this upcoming offseason is going to be a huge offseason for the Cowboys. And if they end up going in the right direction, the next offseason is going to be even bigger. But let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's talk about tonight. So tonight, what I hope to see, if I'm thinking things are getting better, I'd like to see, and I've been saying this for weeks, one or two additional stops when the game matters. Not at the end of the game when it's already out of hand, whichever way it is out of hand. Not when it's already decided. While we are in the point of the game where the game is in the balance, I'd love to see a few more stops. Offensively, people have been kind of crapping on the Cowboys in the same way. Oh, I thought the offensive line was supposed to be awesome. Oh my God, they played so much better. When TJ Bass was in there and Brock Hoffman, was in there, and Johnny Adeniji was in there, and it's another fallacy to me. So when the Cowboys first came out into the season, first half against the Eagles, they were kind of firing. And they were kind of firing against the Giants too. Now that weather delay against the Eagles kind of, made everything kind of go downhill a little bit. And then they started to suffer some injuries. Then you had some other guys come in. The guys that came in, like TJ Bass, like Brock Hoffman, like Hakeem Adeniji, had been playing in preseason games together, have been playing together in training camp all this time long, got some live game reps as well. The Cowboys starters, because of the philosophy that not only the Cowboys, many NFL teams have, but we cover the Cowboys. So the philosophy that the Cowboys have, they don't like to play their starters like that during the preseason. So you have people like Cooper Beebe and Tyler Booker and Smith, Guyton. All these guys didn't really get to play well together and didn't get time to gel. Then they got into the regular season, got a little bit of continuity, and then boom, injury rips them away. Last week against the Cardinals, because everybody wants to talk about the pressure that the Cardinals generated, that was the first game since the first quarter of the Giants game that the Cowboys had their entire offensive line together. Week 9. So for 6 or 7 weeks, they had a combination of a bunch of different guys, playing offensive line. And as we just went over with our analogy, football is not one of those sports where you can just drop someone in and it's like, oh, they're talented, we're better now. In theory, but that still takes time. It takes time. So seeing the way those guys played, and they didn't have a great game. I'm not trying to say or make excuses for them. I'm trying to say I understand why the shortcomings are happening, right? So the hope is that bye week, a little more film time, and then getting to play another game helps out a little bit more. And I know we don't want to hear this, but it's not going to be perfect tonight either. And it's probably not going to be perfect next week against the Eagles. It's probably these guys are going to have 3, 4, 5 weeks of playing together to gel, to allow that trust to develop, and also to allow the familiarity with the weak links, right? Because the offensive line is a weak link system. Most defenses, if they have a way to exploit you, which we're in the NFL, most defenses do. Most defenses have a guy on the line that they can use to kind of find the weakest link and exploit that matchup. So the way you kind of mitigate some of that stuff is getting some time together so that, hey, this guy to your left and to your right, they've played with you a little while. They know now what your weaknesses are. So now when it comes time to compensate, it's not something where I'm getting out of position just to compensate with you. It's actually becoming, I've learned how to work in concert with you to accentuate your strengths and mitigate your weaknesses. So that takes time. And I guess if I had a theme for the episode, it's probably give it time, guys. Give it time. Even if it comes out tonight and it looks great and flawless and the Cowboys win 41-6, it doesn't mean everything's fixed and everything is great for the rest of the season. Because honestly, the only way that you're going to improve is to fail. So if you're not failing, you don't know what you're bad at. And trust me, it's not that you're not failing because you're perfect. I know there's some people on this earth who feel that way. I'm perfect at everything and I'm not failing because I'm awesome. No, you're not failing because you haven't met the right challenge to defeat you yet. And once that happens and you fail, hopefully you get to learn from that and adapt to that. Some of us have to fail multiple times in order to get better at that. And that's how it is in the NFL. You're going to get your butt kicked. You're going to fail, right? So even if the Cowboys come out tonight and for some reason they play their most complete game of the season, that doesn't mean that next week when they go into the Philadelphia Eagles game, they're all of a sudden going to play another complete game. And then they're going to go into, Kansas City and play a complete game. Like it doesn't work that way. So I would like to see the offensive line just kind of make some strides in that communication part. And hopefully that helps out with some pass protection stuff that they had some problems with and some of the run blocking coordination that we were good at early in the season, have kind of struggled with the last few weeks. But again, a lot of new pieces coming back together. Hopefully some of that with some time on task, hoping it gets a little bit better. So let's get into some predictions for tonight. Tonight's a hard game to predict. Because of the whirlwind of different things between the new players, the passing of Marshawn Nealon, the whole bye week situation. In Quinnen Williams' case, he's actually had 2 bye weeks. Logan Wilson hasn't been playing that many snaps with the Cincinnati Bengals. Offensive line, like I said, needing time to gel. It's going to be interesting to see. I think this game is going to be very, very close. I know on paper everything says the Raiders haven't scored over 30 points in 29 straight games. So the thought is, well, the Cowboys have an offense that averages 29 points a game, and the Raiders average like 16. So let's just pick it 29-16 and hit the averages. It could be that way. Who knows? But I more so think this is going to be a tight game pretty much the whole way through. Offensively, I think we have the chance to move the ball, but the Raiders' defense is not as bad as they seem on paper. Just because you don't recognize all the names doesn't necessarily make them a bad defense. And honestly, as much as I want to say the offense for the Raiders have had some trouble this season, the defense for the Cowboys has had their own struggles. And we just went over all the newness. So I could very well see the Raiders scoring a lot of points. Ashton Genty worries me because he is one of the things about the Raiders that is better than it looks, right? On the cosmetic level, on the surface level, it looks like he's having an okay rookie season. But Ashton Genty is breaking tackles at a tremendous rate. And the Cowboys defense has traditionally, up until this point, and that's all I can go on is the history, do a poor job of tackling. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Raiders are able to, block up the Cowboys front and get Ashton Genty to the second level with some of those poor tacklers. I've showed you video of Kenneth Murray jumping out of the way of, the back coming and the lineman coming, just basically taking himself out of the play. I've showed you Shamar James trying to make a play, but trying to go around blocks, and therefore he ends up being out of the play. And then you have somebody like Malik Hooker who just came back. Donovan Wilson, he's back, but he was dealing with a shoulder and an elbow injury, so he's a physical guy. Those types of things could rear their head again. So I actually think Genty's going to have a decent game. Now, do I think Genty's going to have 20 carries for 240 yards? Is he going to pull a Rico Dowdle? No. But do I think he could very well have a 18 carry for 93 yard and maybe 1 or 2 scores? Yes. Brock Bowers, we have no answer. No answer for that man. And don't worry, the Raiders, I'll say this, have been losing all year, and nobody has an answer for Brock Bowers. The only way Brock Bowers ever gets stopped on game day is by the Raiders deciding, like they did last week, we're going to target him one time. And on the one target, 31 yards. And then they just never threw it to him again. So if the Raiders go out there and say, we're not going to target Brock Bowers, then okay. Fine, that helped us out a little bit. But I don't think so. I think when it comes to situations like this, Monday Night Football, going against the Dallas Cowboys, everybody's going to put their best foot forward. So I do expect the Raiders to score points. I expect Brock Bowers to get involved. I expect Geno Smith to have one of his better games of the season. And I'm going to say the Cowboys pull this one out, but barely. So say 28-25, Dallas wins the game, and, we're talking about, whatever happens. Maybe Quinnen is one of those differences. Maybe that's how the Cowboys get their one extra stop is, you know, they make a big tackle on second down to force third and long, and then it's an incomplete on third and long. And lo and behold, we get off the field, and that's all we needed to eke out a 3-point win. But that's all I got for you guys. Hit me up on Twitter at JMiller. IYL, that's JMiller if you like. You can hit me up at knockersonthebottom at outlook.com, knockersonthebottom at gmail.com. Any comments or questions below. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love you guys. Until next time, I'm your host, JMiller if you like. This has been Knockers on the Bottom. Peace.